Cerebral palsy is a big problem in our environment, the cause of childhood neurodisability. Join Dr. Peace Amarebulam on Life Beyond Limits and health awareness program centered on cerebral palsy. Exclusive only on Flow 94.9 FM, 7:30 a.m. on Saturdays. Dr. Peace is a consultant orthopedic surgeon with Federal Medical Center, Umuahia.
Hello, good day. We are back again on another edition of Life Beyond Limits, focused on cerebral palsy, creating an awareness in our environment so that we can make a difference in the lives of children who suffer from this condition. I am Dr. Peace Amarebulam, a consultant orthopedic surgeon with the Federal Medical Center here in Umuahia. Today, we'll still be talking about cerebral palsy and how it manifests. But unlike last week when we talked about the different symptoms, the manifestations, now we'll be talking about the types. Because there are different types of cerebral palsy. There are different ways that this condition is classified. There are different ways that, they are grouped, or the symptoms are grouped, so that the treatment can be planned. Like I said earlier, this condition is a challenging condition. It just means that the child is different and it taxes the parents. It needs a lot of patience from the parents. The children need a lot of support from their caregivers. So today, we are talking about the types, and there are different types. Now, the first type that we are going to talk about today is the spastic type of cerebral palsy. The spastic type of cerebral palsy. Now, this spastic type of cerebral palsy, if you remember when we talked about the manifestations last week, we talked about the muscles. When you say it's spastic, it means that the tone is high. It means that, the muscle is stiff. So when that happens, the tone is higher. That spastic type of cerebral palsy can affect two limbs on the same side, in which case you say it's spastic diplegia. Diplegia means if it's affecting the limbs, the lower limbs, it's just the lower limbs. If it's affecting the upper limbs, it's just the upper limbs. Most times it affects commonly. Spastic diplegia would affect more commonly the lower limbs. That's the legs in layman's term. So the hands will be stronger. That means the patient can use their hands better. Or it can also be spastic hemiplegia. Hemiplegia or hemiparesis now is just one side of the body affected. Now, we'll differentiate that from the spastic diplegia, which is two limbs of the same sort, like the legs or the hands, but more often the legs. Okay? Means the two legs, like I have. Hemi means now is one part of the body. So it's the upper limb and the lower limb on one side, either the right or the left, that is affected in spastic hemiplegia. Or it may even be spastic quadriplegia. That's not so common, but wow, it's a very, very, very severe expression. When it's quadri, of course, it means it's a four. The two upper, the two lower that are affected. And in that case, even the trunk and the face may also be affected. The child that has a spastic quadriplegia cannot walk. It's difficult to walk. There's just no way he can do it. All the muscles are stiff. And these children are also the ones that are likely to have developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. Many of them have seizures, they have problems with vision, they have hearing impairments, they have speech problems. They have all manner of things, and they are the most tasking for anyone to handle. That's the spastic variety. Now, the other type of cerebral palsy is the dyskinetic cerebral palsy. The dyskinetic cerebral palsy has uncontrollable movements. Under this type, you have the atetoid, you have the choroid, the choroatetoid. Pardon all those terms. It just means that the movements are abnormal. This child has difficulties controlling the movement of their hands, controlling the movements of their arms, controlling the movements of the feet and the legs. The muscle tone will keep changing. Sometimes they are too tight, sometimes they are too loose. Sometimes the child keeps falling. He tries to walk, but he keeps falling. He keeps tripping. He keeps, having so much issues like that. He just can't maintain a particular activity. He can't just maintain a particular tone. He can't just maintain movement a particular way. And that is a big issue for him. All right. Now, the other type of cerebral palsy is the ataxic cerebral palsy. Ataxic. Those ones that have the ataxic type of cerebral palsy, they have problems with balance and coordination. The first group, the people that have the spastic, for them, the muscles are stiff. We talked about the different types. For these ones, their problem is majorly with balance and coordination. So when they are trying to walk, they may be unsteady. When they stand, they are the ones that will keep swaying. They can't, for a normal person, even when you are standing up, you can close your eyes and you still maintain a particular position. You don't fall when you close your eyes because your muscles are good. You have a good balance. But for the child with cerebral palsy, it's difficult, especially the ones that have the ataxic type. They can't maintain their balance, so they keep falling. They are unsteady when they walk. Their gaits are just abnormal. It looks like they are dancing when they are trying to walk. They can't coordinate the fine motor activities. So many things are difficult for them. Now, for those that have the mixed type, it can be any combination. It can be the combination of any of the types, the spastic, the dyskinetic, the ataxic. Any of them can be combined in the mixed. But most times, the commonest combination is the spastic dyskinetic. That means the muscles are stiff. But sometimes they also have these difficulties controlling their movements. They also have these difficulties controlling their activities. They have these difficulties controlling what they do. Now, these are the different types of cerebral palsy. The essence of having the different types or trying to find out what the manifestations are is that it helps you, or it helps the doctor attending to the patient or the other health personnel attending to the patient to plan what's going to be done for this patient. I'll go over that again. Just a way of reminding us that there are different ways that it could manifest, and we have talked about all that. Basically is a disorder in motor function. It's a disorder from the muscles. The muscles are either too weak or too stiff. Most times, or more often than not, they are stiff, but it can also be other things. The affectation may just be on the muscles. That means the way the patient presents may just be the weakness or the stiff muscles. But there may also be other manifestations like the seizures that we talked about, the drooling, the loss of balance, and all those things that would also happen. And I also said earlier that most times the first thing that the mother notices, or whoever is taking care of the child very closely, the first thing that the person notices is that there is a delay in the developmental milestones. This child doesn't seem to achieve the milestones when his peers or when his mates are achieving them. And then the mother or whoever takes care of the child knows there's a problem. Fine. And when the child presents to the doctor, part of the evaluation is to find out exactly, the history will be taken. You want to find out what are the possible causes or risk factors that this child would have been exposed to. And I said that most times it would have been like the child was born prematurely or had birth asphyxia. That means there was a delay in getting oxygen to the brain, which would have been because the child was maybe born in a place where they didn't have the facility. So when he didn't cry initially, it was difficult to get the right things to help him. And that not crying may last for up to 5 minutes. That's why you want the baby to cry immediately after birth to get the oxygen and everything going to the brain. You want to find out other things. When the child was delivered, assuming the pregnancy for the mother was okay and the delivery was okay, was the child ill in the early periods? Did he have any infections, any fever, and things like that? You also want to find out, was this child jaundiced and everything? They are the things you want to know from the history. Or was there even a history of trauma, like the child falling or something hitting him or being shaken? Okay, when you have all that, then you also examine this child physically so that you have the type. You classify what cerebral palsy he has. When you examine him, you check the muscles as well, and you find out whether the tone is low or higher than what it should be. So you know whether he's hypotonic or hypertonic. And then when you have the type of cerebral palsy that this child has, it helps you to plan the treatment.
You're listening to Life Beyond Limits with Dr. Peace, sensitizing you on childhood neurodisability, known as cerebral palsy. For your question, contribution, and comment, send a message to 0818 079 7949.
Now, what will be the treatment? How is cerebral palsy treated? That's going to be the bulk of what we'll be talking about in the next weeks to come. But basically, I will tell us cerebral palsy has no cure. Now, saying that, it may be frightening to someone. So if it doesn't have a cure, then what are we talking about? Why are we wasting our time? Why don't you just abandon the baby? That's the essence of having this talk. That's why we need to talk about it. It does not have a cure, so nothing that you're ever going to do will make this condition to go away. No, it's a permanent condition. It's due to a permanent injury, and the injury has happened, which means it has happened. It's not going away, it's not going anywhere. But the treatment is to help this child. The child with cerebral palsy is not abnormal. He is a normal child. It's just that for him, normal is different. He's not like every other child. So he is different. Things for him are different. Movements, everything is different. But it does not in any way mean that this child would end up useless. It does not in any way mean that this child will not amount to somebody. It does not in any way mean that this child cannot achieve like every other person. There have been persons, in fact, there have been famous persons in history, even in Nigeria, who have cerebral palsy or who were either discovered to have cerebral palsy quite early, or maybe in early childhood they had one injury or the other that caused them to have cerebral palsy. But yet, they went on to make their marks. What's very, very important is that these children need so much support from their families. They need so much support from the people around them. They need so much support from the people close to them. They need to be encouraged. They need to know that, yes, they can amount to somebody. They need to know that, yes, they can do so many things. They need to appreciate that having cerebral palsy does not mean that they cannot do what they want to do. They need to be taught this can-do attitude. Having a can-do attitude would actually help them so much. Now, I'm going to tell us some people, famous people in history who have cerebral palsy or who were discovered to have cerebral palsy. Josh Blue. Josh Blue is a sculptor. It's even someone born very close to us from Cameroon. He's a painter, he's a TV producer, he's a film producer, he's a screenwriter, and he has cerebral palsy. So you see, it's something that can happen and it doesn't reduce the value of this child. He just needs to know that, yeah, I can do it, and he goes on to do it. There's Christy Brown. Christy Brown is an Irish painter and a writer. He did his autobiography, titled it My Left Foot. And that autobiography became the basis for an Academy Award-winning film. Isn't that wonderful? This is a child that you would have thought has a disability, like many of us would put it. But this child went on to amount to somebody, not just to amount to somebody. He could write down his story, and that story could be the basis for a movie that got an award, an international award. That's really amazing. It just shows you that, you see, cerebral palsy means I'm different. It doesn't mean I'm abnormal. Then there's Anne MacDonald. Anne MacDonald is an Australian. Anne is both an author and an advocate. And it was Anne, because of her speech disabilities, she said not being able to speak is not the same as not having something to say. That's amazing. I mean, a lot of us have all the abilities that God has given us. We are able to speak. We don't have any speech disabilities. We don't have any abnormalities with talking. But when it matters, we don't have anything to say. We don't have any message to pass on. We can talk, but we have nothing to say. But this is someone who is not really able to pass on messages like that, but she was able to communicate. I said not being able to speak is not the same as not having something to say. I really find that very, very impressive. Another child with cerebral palsy, Kelly, said life is not just about blending in, it's about standing out. I mean, if people we consider to have disabilities could, stand out this way, what about you? With all the abilities that God has given you, you are healthy as we put it, you don't have any such abnormalities as they do, you should be able to do much more. And for those children, they are not write-offs. They should be encouraged. They should be taught that can-do attitude. Jerry Jewell is an American actress. She is doing very well. In fact, she was named among the most famous 13 people with cerebral palsy in the world. I'm talking about the world. That's really a very interesting thing. Or what about Eric Geras? That's a film producer and an actor. You can see, having cerebral palsy doesn't mean that child is a write-off. So let's not write them off. Let's give them the right environment so that they can also achieve something, so that they can also express themselves. Many of them have messages. We should help them to express their message. And then there's Ruth Messer, there's Dan Keplinger, who is a visual artist, there's Mercian Zaid. Her story is just interesting. She is now 41. So you can imagine that. She is the first female Muslim comedian to perform in Palestine and Jordan. Can you beat that? So her religion was not a deterrent. Her physical condition was not a deterrent. Nothing was a deterrent. She went on to express herself. She went on to do something, and she stood out. There's David Ring. David Ring is a Christian evangelist and a motivation speaker. I mean, come to think about it, this somebody, you in your right thinking senses, you will think, oh, this person is disabled. Then, this person that you think is disabled is now the one that is talking to you, is a motivational speaker. That's amazing. David Ring is now 63, so you can tell he's not a baby anymore. He has lived with cerebral palsy for 63 years of his life. That's a long time. He didn't get discouraged on the way. He didn't quit. He had parents who, as a child, they pushed him on. They told him, yeah, you can do it. You can do anything you set your mind on. And he went on and he excelled. And today we can hear about him. In fact, his signature line goes like, I have cerebral palsy. What's your problem? So for him, cerebral palsy is just another way of living. But you don't have cerebral palsy. Are you actually thinking we can encourage our children? It doesn't matter that they have cerebral palsy. It's just a clinical condition like so many other things. They can still live. They can still express themselves. They can still amount to somebody, and they can still excel. There's Abby Curran. Abby Curran is just 28 years old. But for her, she was a contestant in an American beauty pageant. Abby Curran now runs a Miss You Can Do It pageant for girls and women with special needs. Someone said, if life gives you lemon, turn it into lemonade. So she had a disability, as we say. She has cerebral palsy, but that was not a deterrent for her. She went on to contest in a beauty pageant. And beyond that, she's also using that platform to reach out to other people. So she organizes this pageant. She calls it Miss You Can Do It. You think you have cerebral palsy? Come on. You think you have any other special need? come on and confess. Maybe sometime we could have something, not a beauty pageant, but we could have a talent show or something for children with cerebral palsy. I mean, they are also children just like every other child. They have their needs. They have the same needs that children have. They need to show what talents they have. They need to show what they can do, and we can encourage them to do that. That would be wonderful, I think. I'm sure you agree with me that it would really be wonderful to do that. And then what about Chris Newland? Chris Newland is an Australian. He's 33 now, but he's an award-winning poet and author. And he has cerebral palsy. So you see, having cerebral palsy is not a problem. It does not make you a write-off. It does not make the child a write-off. It does not mean the child cannot excel. It does not mean the child cannot achieve. It only means that it takes more responsibility from the parents and other caregivers to find out what this child can do well, what this child can excel in, what this child can do so that he or she stands out. Okay, maybe you are thinking I'm just giving you names of people all over the world coming back home in Nigeria. There's this barrister Tobiloba Ajayi. Tobiloba has cerebral palsy. She did not walk till she was 12. She started school at the age of 3. One good thing that happened was that her parents were very supportive. Her parents knew, she has a condition that makes her a bit different from every other child, but then it doesn't mean that she couldn't amount to anything. And Barrister Ajayi has now grown up. She has contributed in no small measure through her profession. She's a lawyer. She has contributed in making the special act for those with disability in Lagos State. So she's doing something. She's not just a write-off. And she's a Nigerian. So you wouldn't say, you just gave us names of people outside. It can't happen in Nigeria. Nigeria is different. Our condition is different. No, our condition is not different. Even here, things can be done. Currently, she's working with Benola Cerebral Palsy Initiative, and she's contributing her quota towards making people appreciate that having cerebral palsy is not a death sentence. What about Tokumbo Johnson? Tokumbo Johnson currently has her master's degree. Who says that every child with cerebral palsy must be intellectually impaired? No, it doesn't work that way. There are people who have cerebral palsy even in Nigeria, and they haven't killed themselves. They are also doing well. What of Uche Madukwe? They are all people, Nigerians, who have cerebral palsy, but instead of being subjected to life as nobodies, they have turned their conditions around. They are using their conditions to reach out to other people. They are using their conditions to do something. And in their careers, in the different careers that they have chosen, they are all doing very well. And that is simply amazing. Now, what about the parents? Showing you that, when you have a parent that has the right attitude, that it's willing to invest in this child, things can still happen positively. Air Vice Marshal Femi Wadebo, who started the Benola Initiative, has a son with cerebral palsy. A child who is completely dependent, but he hasn't given up on him. In fact, he's one of the best lessons I have for when life gives you lemon, you turn it into lemonade. He reaches out to other parents, he reaches out to children with cerebral palsy because he believes that, we can make a difference in the lives of people with cerebral palsy. It's not a death sentence. It has its disability, but even with the disability, something can be done so that these children live to achieve their life visions. So on our own part, we can also do something, and that's what we are going to do. We are not going to just fold our hands. Over the coming weeks, we'll now be talking about what can be done. What can be done. We'll take it, the different ways that it can be done, all the things that can be done. The earlier the diagnosis is made, the better for the child. The earlier the intervention services are instituted, the better for the child and the better for everybody. That will form the core of our presentations in the coming weeks. I know you are still there with me. Send in your contributions, send in your SMS, your questions and all that to 0818 079 7949. I'm still Dr. Peace Amarebulam, Federal Medical Center on my head. Have a wonderful weekend.
That's it this week on Life Beyond Limits, where Dr. Peace sensitizes you on cerebral palsy. For your question, contribution, and comment, send a message to 0818-079-7949. Strictly text message.
Smile for me, even if you're sad. Be good to me, even if you battle. Stay with me, even if you've got some place to be. Pray with me, even if you know believe. Smile for me, baby me please, smile.